A little late, it's okay. Dinner was very good and nice, but it's always crowded. We have so many people here, so excuse the excuses of me saying, hang on a minute, I'll try not to stop for this. Really quick, everybody, thank you for being here. I have some wonderful staff already here. Allison over here in the corner, Tyson in the back is being recorded. We're going to record this session so you can share it with others. My hope is, and I really hope you enjoy this class, but I want to warn you up front and ahead of time, this is like a very fast bullet train. It will start slow, it'll start moving faster, and then I'm going to really go fast and just share everything I can. And I do talk fast, so I hope that's not too much of a problem for everybody. I will take questions at the end myself, and some of my proctors here will take some questions for you. So just kind of bear with me for a minute. I'm going to give you a sweet, fast, and I think it's sweet, fast demonstration on a PowerPoint of what I have came across me personally. This is trading up, migrating your company from AutoCAD to SketchUp. A little bit of a background for me, and after this agenda here, brief history, PowerPoint presentation. I will give a small SketchUp demonstration. I will take the largest CAD file that I have came across for me in my industry. I actually wanted to pick a file for my 28 years in the CAD industry. It was a large file, complex file, not too complex. It is a cross-section, geological cross-section underground of a 3-mile site. Very large, 600 feet deep wells. The longest well being dug in the ground was 600 feet. The rest were smaller. This was 4 months out of my life. I looked at this drawing for 4 months. I don't like to look at it anymore. When I opened up this drawing, I looked at it and I was like, wow, I just happy I forgot that. I will talk a little bit about libraries and external references. If you're not familiar with this, I'm sure most of you are, since you're here with this subject matter. Most of you know AutoCAD. I'm hoping this makes sense. I'll try to explain everything. An XREF is an external reference file. I will talk a little bit about extensions. And at the end, I like to take questions and offer answers for you for this presentation. This is my first 1-hour presentation in a while, so I'm going to try to go slow and slow down a little bit, but I did want to share a little bit about me and make it really brief. I started Design Time, it's an LLC out of Vancouver, Washington. It's a one-man operation. Me and the boss don't get along some days. I try to change my pay, and he won't listen to me and things like that, but it is a small operation for me. I do enjoy it. It is a smaller company, though. I do have a broad base of computer-aided drafting and design. I just realized I misspelled my word. Yes, the teacher makes mistakes. It says this is the blurb that we got to write about. A few people here at Trimble helped me write this. I like to say I'm recognized as an expert in teaching 3D software only because I've been teaching it now for about 12 years. I have 30 years in the AutoCAD industry. I have 9 years teaching SketchUp. I started the advanced and basic SketchUp class at 2 community colleges in Colorado. Currently teach at a community college up in Vancouver, Washington. And with my own business, it's 28 years in the industry. I have tried to develop interdisciplinary skills, hard word, on projects from the initial planning stages to the design and development of construction. This demonstration I'm giving you, I just wanted to do this for fun. I'm a teacher that loves to see my students smile, so I hope I can make you smile at least one time in this class. I threw this up here. I did a little research on Wikipedia. A lot of people don't look at Wikipedia. I still do now and then. This is migrate. The key word is change. I highlighted down at the bottom, something that seems hard for a lot of us, especially in business. When you change something, typically, change can be difficult for a lot of people. When you change things, it can be anything, and I had to get my glasses out for this because the text is so small I couldn't make it any bigger. This is really funny, some of the things you can do, make or become different. Obviously we know this is all about change. We can use something instead of something else. One of my favorites is put a clean diaper on a baby. No, wait a minute, that's not mine. Engage a different gear in a motor vehicle. Now that's my change. I like that one. That's a good one. So all right, that's change. Preparation. On the very bottom of this slide, you'll see it's the key to all. I will be emphasizing preparation. For me to prepare for this demonstration, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning and did it for the third time in front of the mirror to make sure it sounded okay. So I'm trying my best to prepare it, but that is the key to success in what we're about to show, what I'm about to show you. Preparation, and that comes in many forms with people. It's a little bit different. So I put this up there for just a hesitation moment. Wanted to show you something about SketchUp or SketchUp and CAD and in industry. When it comes to change, not very many of us like it. Change is difficult, but I can tell you and assure you, for one thing, the only thing consistent in life is change. It really is, and you know that. A lot of you shaking your heads, but change can be difficult for a lot of people. I have found in my industry of teaching, since I've moved from Colorado to the Pacific Northwest in Vancouver, Washington, which by the way was the original Vancouver by 7 years of Vancouver, Canada. Just had to put that plug out there for my town. When it comes to Vancouver in that area, I do a lot of teaching in the city of Portland. I've had the pleasure in the past 2.5 years of helping individual companies and, companies and individuals transfer their CAD files into SketchUp. It can be a varied amount. It could be small. It could be 1 or 2. Sometimes it's quite a bit. The largest I've seen in industry has been converting about 300 drawings. It takes a long time, but I go into a company and I try to find out what they want, how they're going to use that CAD file in SketchUp. And so what I've done is thrown this PowerPoint together to just really show you just some of the preparation that I do, but also some of the processes. It is a preparation. I love this picture. This is one of my favorite ones. I love swimming in a pool by myself. And every now and then the pool's too small, so I jump to a bigger one, and then I realize, wait a minute, hey, who's that? I got to go over to the other one and get into a bigger one. That's kind of like migrating a software program. You start by yourself, one-man operation maybe, or you start with one drawing, and you go into other drawings. Before you know it, you're doing 380 drawings. It can be a complex process. Here's one of the key differences with AutoCAD and SketchUp. AutoCAD, a majority of the companies that are using AutoCAD, a lot of them use it for 2D design and drafting. They just want to see a 2D drawing. There is a lot of companies who do 3D design in AutoCAD, but a good portion of it, 51%, tend to be using it for 2D drafting. Now, if you own 51% of a company, guess what? You own the company. You don't need all the other 49%. It's nice to have it all, but you know what? You could sell 49 and still own the company. If I'm doing 51% in 2D, I'm probably doing 2D more than I am 3D in CAD. I have found SketchUp to be used for 3D modeling. Both SketchUp and AutoCAD have a lot of advantages, some more than others, but there's a lot of differences. And differences can look different to everyone. This is my opinion. I had to share my opinion. My opinion from a teacher's perspective. As a teacher at university and colleges and individual companies, I've seen the learning curve of AutoCAD is long and a challenging one to most individuals. I didn't say easy, and I didn't say simple. It's challenging. Challenging to me means I have to slow down. Challenging means it takes time. If it was easy, I wouldn't need to teach anything because everybody can do it. Simple just means I can do it a little bit different than you do. I may be a step or two ahead of you. But I can tell you one thing, SketchUp is, from a learning perspective from teachers in my field, the ones I've known who've taught it. I got a chance to speak to Bonnie Rokes, who's a friend of mine that I know here today. She's a teacher on the side. I know a few other teachers I've talked to in the past 3 days, and they find that SketchUp is easier to teach than AutoCAD. Here's an AutoCAD file. I'm going to minimize this PowerPoint real quick, and I did this for you. I apologize up front. This is AutoCAD. I say that because I don't like to look at AutoCAD anymore. AutoCAD has over 480 icons. You only use about 40% of them. If anybody uses more than that, come talk to me. I'd like to meet you. I want to shake your hand. Some use a lot more than that. What was that? I heard somebody say something. AutoCAD is challenging and interesting. This drawing was a drawing that was for 4 months I worked on. This is geological cross-section, over 3 miles long. It looks kind of hard to see from where you're at. If I zoom up, you'll look at the detail above the ground and below the ground. You'll see some geological data. You'll see some strata. This is back in 1997. When did I do this? 1997. I worked for a company called Harding Lawson Associates in downtown Denver. This is not just me drawing this. At the time, I was a simple designer drafter. I worked with 6 engineers for 4 months to create this drawing. When we got done with this drawing, we printed it. We printed it 6 feet wide and 30-something feet long. It would post on the side of that wall over there. Took it to a demonstration to the company who needed it. A gentleman walked up to me and said, "Can I have a copy of that?" And I said, "Sure, talk to my boss," because this was not cheap. And he said, "Yeah, how much did that cost, Larry?" And I said, "About $300 back then." And the guy says, "I'll take 7 of them." Hey, you got it. But this drawing was a lot to do. It was cumbersome. 6 engineers and I worked on it. I'm not an engineer. I just make engineers look good, and this is what we ended up with. I wanted you to see in AutoCAD what it looked like. I'm going to bring this file into SketchUp. Now, this is a large file. It's 21 megs. Not too big. It's big enough. But it is a file that comes from AutoCAD, and it does take a little time in SketchUp. So in SketchUp, and I'll bring that up real quick. I have a blank SketchUp file here. I'm just going to do File, Import, and I will talk a little bit more about this here later on. I'm going to go to my file. What I have found by bringing in AutoCAD files is quite a bit of differences as far as, and let me change this. Where I'm at, there we go. And I'm going to go to my desktop and go to my files. Oops, Basecamp, there we go. And I'm going to open this file in SketchUp. While I'm talking, you're going to see this file open up. This is the importing process. Yes, you would have to do this for each individual drawing one at a time, unless you know how to do it differently. There is other ways to do multiple drawings, and we can bring in layout. We do have the AutoCAD importer support that we have. We can bring in a file in layout also. This is fairly quick. By the way, that CAD file that I opened took me almost 10 minutes. I was speaking to a friend of mine up front here, Jared. Jared is, I have to welcome him. Jared is one of my former students at Front Range Community College. I haven't seen in a couple years now, and still doing the business, and it was a pleasure to see him again. But he was in one of my classes, and while he was talking to me, I opened up CAD, and it took me almost 10 minutes to open that file, large file. Taking a look up here real quick, some of you have seen this when you've imported a file. Here's some of the things that come into a CAD file. You'll see how many layers, 106 layers, a lot of layers, 927 blocks. Quite a bit, 380,000 lines. Just to show you this, go ahead and open it fairly quick. Stacy, who's right there, notice my arrow is still white. It's processing and thinking. You get the cycle on it. It opens up. I do a zoom extents. I look at the top view. There's my CAD file. Similar, but when I go back to the title block, it's blank. I like to show this to people just to show you what it does, and when you bring in CAD, there is some translation errors. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. In this PowerPoint presentation, from my perspective, when I see this, there is a difference. AutoCAD's been around since '82. How many people have used AutoCAD since, you can't raise your hand, Nick, since release 2? Wow, 1, 2, got a couple people. 3, wow. That's impressive. These gentlemen are amazing because I didn't start till release 6. I thought that was a lot. But AutoCAD, when it started in '82, SketchUp started back in 1999 with Brad Shell, was the original guy, gentleman that worked in it, John Backus, quite a few other people. There was 5 people that started Atlas Software out of Boulder, Colorado. Most of you know this. The release date was in August 2000. Google acquired it in 2006. 6 years later, Trimble acquired it, and we are here today. This software program, since 1982, for AutoCAD to be around can be very interesting, but it's been around for a while, and the prices is constantly changing. This was 2 weeks ago. These numbers may change. As far as I know, this is accurate as of 2 weeks ago. Monthly subscription for AutoCAD is $210 a month. It's quite pricey. Yearly is $1,680. I can purchase a new SketchUp Pro 2018 license for $695. I believe I won't spend any more money for 2 years when I get an update. And when I do, it's going to be minimal, $100, $150. Cost isn't just money. It can also be time involved. This is something I come across quite a bit when you look at different processes in different companies. When I discuss a client's current processes and their CAD standards, I try to demonstrate the ease and speed of SketchUp. I open up a CAD file in SketchUp and show them how quick it is. I try to show in a complete layout document set. That's helpful. I do try to teach them, or at least talk about good work habits. I am a proponent of the scrapbooks. I can say I was inspired by several people. First and foremost, a good friend of mine who told me all about scrapbooks. I use them like crazy. You talk about saving time, have a scrapbook. If you're not familiar with scrapbooks in layout, this meeting ends at 2:15. I'll be happy to spend 20 minutes with you, 15, 10 minutes, and I'll share about scrapbooks, and it'll save you time in your business. And time is, what was time? Time is what?
Money.
I've never had to answer that question. Somebody's always answered it for me. Time is money. I also try to show not just scrapbooks, but extensions and templates. I try to give them the right information, the right for them. If I talk to a civil engineer, it's a little bit different than an architect. So I try to give information that is pertinent to them. I do show websites to people, different individual websites that are out there that'll help. I do promise to give good feedback along the way. This helps me when I work with clients who are trying to transition from AutoCAD to SketchUp to let them know I won't throw them in the deep end of the water. Then I tell them, I'm going to throw you in the deep end of the water, but I'm going to dive in next to you and swim with you for a while. I'll get you to the edge. And I give them good support afterwards. I do follow up. I get back with them. It is a step process. Encourage getting good additional training from other professional SketchUp trainers is something that you may need down the road. How many people can answer this question? Let's say, well, you have to answer it. I bet most people who own a company lose employees, people quit, people move on, and at some point you got to hire someone else and train them again. So things change. And as that changes, keep in mind, you should expect a transition time frame, and that is a variable. It can be minimal, it can be simple if you have good training. With online education or in-house, you give the migration sufficient time to succeed. Practice, practice, practice. I try to take the time to do it right, make the difference good. Problems transitioning. If you're afraid to make the move and change, that's one thing I hear a lot. People are afraid to make the move. I heard something yesterday outside. Somebody said they talked to a client the other day and they asked, why aren't you using, or it's not a client, they talked to somebody on the outside and they said, why aren't you using SketchUp full time and you still using AutoCAD for certain things? And he says, oh, I came here to see if somebody can prove the difference for me. I still look at it like a toy. And I'm like, it is a toy. It's the best toy you'll ever buy. It's the best toy that's the most fun to use, and it's the most efficient toy when it comes to work. That's where you want to look at it. I think people are more afraid to move because of the change, to move to a new platform, and they're very set in their ways. I am old school, and it isn't just the gray hair. I don't like change either. But you know what? Sometimes what I like isn't part of the equation. Sometimes I need to. Little or no knowledge or a misconception of SketchUp. That's where that comes from. People just haven't seen it. So try to demonstrate to them how easy it is and show them what you think it is that's good about SketchUp. Here's the things I've came across that do not translate very well. Text. Text is an attributed block in AutoCAD. Text is something that is attributed. Attributes means attributed. It means you take and you attribute information to it. You make a block out of it in CAD, or you use the dimension command and make a dimension. That is an attributed block. Self-contained information. You can stretch that dimension. As you stretch that dimension, the dimension text updates. You've seen that in CAD, you've seen that in SketchUp, you've seen that in layout. That is an attributed block in a form. Different programs think of it differently, but text can be a problem in a dimension. Dimensions are problems within themselves. Some text styles will not translate into SketchUp. I've seen few, but I've seen enough that I say that text definitely sometimes does not translate. If it does translate over, and if you can get it over, and there's a way to get it over, and I'll explain that, I can explode the text during the process I use to work on a CAD file. Then I can get the text to come over, but it is not text. It's lines. SketchUp has problems with hatching. Not all of them. Some do come over. XREFs, for those who are familiar with it, external references. One of the processes I use for SketchUp is to take that XREF and make it live in the CAD file before I bring it into SketchUp. Live meaning it is not an external reference anymore, it's in my model. Proprietary ARCs objects, ARX files, those can be a problem. Proprietary meaning there's some COGO data maybe. If you're in Civil 3D, you Civil 3D operators know that Civil 3D has COGO data. It's electronic file data that works with surfaces. That can translate over and become a problem. It's definitely a concern. I've heard people say, I have a very large CAD library, and I always ask, how large? And I go, well, I have a lot. I have 230. I'm like, well, I know 467. And then one day somebody says, I have 500 and something. I forgot the number now. I'm like, wow, It's a lot of CAD files. Do you really use all those? You just have the library. Some people want to convert that library. So imagine converting 500 plus drawings. So that can be a problem, talking about a large existing CAD library. Don't spend a lot of money, or excuse me, they don't want to spend a lot of money on changing. And I'm like, that's awesome, that's great. SketchUp, $695. How much did you pay for your subscription to CAD? So I save money right there. Going to SketchUp can save you money. This drawing, I had to throw this on here, scales. For some reason, almost every industry I've ever worked with, architects, engineers, interior designers, struggle with the word scale. They have problems scaling up, down, round, whatever size they can, and scaling can be a problem to a lot of people. That can be a major issue in AutoCAD going to SketchUp. If I try to import a feet and inches drawing from CAD into a meters template, that can be a problem. So you got to be careful with scale. Time is probably the biggest one. I made it nice and bold for everybody. Time is the biggest one. Most people don't want to spend a lot of time doing this. I want what I want when I want it. I tell them you get what you get when you get it. I tell them time is something that we have to plan, and you have to plan and be aware that it's going to take time to do this. This is not an overnight process. 28 years in AutoCAD, I became a very efficient, fast CAD operator. Very fast, very efficient. And even my speed was not enough. When it comes to translating CAD files, it still takes me time sometimes to convert a library of 500 drawings, etc. So you got to be careful with that. At the very bottom I wrote, some problems create other problems. You ever have a problem create another problem? Well, that's what happens when you translate files sometimes. Moving on, helping to make the change. I encourage them that the time is well worth all, both internally and more importantly, their clients will see from a professional level a difference. SketchUp has, in all my years of teaching it, shown everybody a professional, better looking drawing. It is not just the colors, it is not just the hatches, it is everything from fog effect to placement to correct layout and design, how to put a drawing together, a 3-view drawing, aligning text, making sure all the text is the same, upper lowercase, lower uppercase, you know what I'm talking about, standards. In all the years I've been in the industry, I have not seen a lot of companies have in mind, and I'm only talking about my clients and the people I've worked with and the offices I've worked at, I have not seen a lot of people have and use a CAD standard or a SketchUp standard even. We just do what we know works best for us, and that's okay too. But sometimes you have to worry about that. I think when you let them know that the time in translating and transitioning from one to another in learning is less with SketchUp than with other 3D programs. That is important to everybody, because other programs to transfer from CAD to another program, MicroStation, can take time too, and if not, a lot longer than it would for SketchUp. This is a step process. A step process during the transition. It is definitely something that both platforms, you have time in both platforms, and it really takes a little bit of time, but it is a step process. What I mean by that is when you're taking a step process with a client, we sit down and we talk and we say, okay, this is the beginning step, this is the middle step, this is the last step, and here's the follow-up. I really emphasize that it is a step process. If anybody talks to you and they say, well, can't you just click a button? I can, only it's 10,000 involved. I can't just click a button. I have to take my time to do it right. In industry, we say there's never enough time to do it right, but always enough time to do it over, you hope. And I know in industry, if you want to do it right, you should do it right. And I think when you do it right, it really makes a difference in the long run. So anyway, going back to this here, the step process, tell them all of this is very normal, make them feel comfortable. Problems always have solutions. I just have to find them. Steps in AutoCAD to take. I'm going to try to hurry up here a little bit. Change is changing unsupported elements, deleting unnecessary layers, moving geometry close to the origin point. Well, wait a minute, wait a minute, Larry, my drawing is in a coordinate system. Can I keep it? Yes, you may, and you should. You may need it. But if you bring in a drawing in SketchUp that is geo-referenced to a coordinate, site coordinate, state planar, if you bring a CAD file into SketchUp, it will come in at that coordinate. That's really good to do if you need it. But if you don't, move everything to layer 0, 0. Everything will show up next to Stacy in the upper corner, and you don't have to do zoom extents and see two tiny dots, one on one side, which is Stacy, and one on the other side, that's your model. So that helps too. Going from reducing the file size if needed. How do you reduce a file size in AutoCAD? If you take an AutoCAD file, you can purge a drawing. You can take an XREFs file that is reference, and you can put it live in the drawing and clean up the drawing. You can audit the file. AUDIT, if you're familiar with that in AutoCAD, it is a fix repair command. AUDIT, enter, yes, enter, fixes problems. Purging is a good one. Reducing the size is very good. Importing only necessary geometry. If you can import only what you need, I would recommend that. I don't need someone's title block in all my details I'm trying to bring into a drawing. Get rid of the title block. And there is still some CAD users that put title blocks in model space. So be careful with that. Model paper space. If the AutoCAD file is too large, break it into separate files if possible. Make it smaller. Check the unit of measurement. If you're working in meters in CAD, open that in a meter template in SketchUp. Very helpful. Save to a sketchable, compatible CAD file format. And for me, and if you look on any website, they'll tell you release 13 and 14 works best. I heard today that 2010 is a good one. I believe release 13 and 14 is best. Save your CAD file. File, pull down menu, save as. At the bottom of the window, you'll see the option to save it as different file formats. Save that as a different file format. 14, in my professional opinion, of all the versions of CAD I ever used, was the best. I got a few shaking of the heads here. You know it. It is. Windows 2000 came out right after that. First Windows base. It slowed down. AutoCAD 2006 was decent. Got better. And then it got confusing and complex after that. My personal opinion, my professional opinion. Problem solve has solutions. Remember that. Here we go. Some more steps to take now, but differently. We're going to take the steps in SketchUp. What can I do in SketchUp to help me bring a CAD file into SketchUp? How do I trade up and go from CAD to SketchUp? You can merge coplanar faces. These are options that show up in a dialog box. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll show you this in a little bit. You can orientate faces consistently. Optional, import geometry at the correct scale. Select the unit used in AutoCAD. I talked a little bit about that. Make sure you're doing that correctly. And here's a tip, everybody. If you don't know the units based in the original file, use a large unit size, such as feet or meters. Then you can resize the model as necessary after it's imported. Save to a compatible format. Once again, 13 and 14. I wrote this twice for a reason. It's really important to save it down to a better version that'll work better in SketchUp. I always say when I walk up and I say, hey, doc, it hurts when I do this. What does the doctor say? Don't do that. Here we go. Steps to take in SketchUp. Preserve the drawing origin. This is what opens up, this little dialog box. Not even complex. Merge coplanar faces. Orient faces consistently. Preserve the drawing origin. That's very important. And then at the bottom, the most important, the scale. You can hit that down arrow on the right next to model limit. You can change the units to match your CAD file. Take your time. Steps in layout, bringing CAD files into the layout. Here's a dialog box that can pop up. AutoCAD has paper model space. Paper space does a certain thing. Model space does certain things for us in AutoCAD. But then also, SketchUp has a model reference, and this model reference can be very important. Layout CAD file importer supports many CAD elements. Many, if not the majority, but not all. Choose wisely. Helping you to make the change. Most individuals will learn SketchUp well within a few weeks or less. I've seen a high percentage. This number is low to me. If you don't believe me, I do have a student here, Jared. He's sitting at the front row. Jared, raise your hand for me. There you go. Ask him. 95% of the people who take and learn SketchUp, in my opinion, learn how to do it faster, quicker, and they enjoy it all the more. And I mean that. 12 years of teaching, I have seen so many smiling faces. My favorite saying that my students told me, one of them said, Larry, you helped me realize my dreams. You helped me see them, learning SketchUp. I get goosebumps thinking about that. That's awesome. All right, this is my personal opinion, and I'm sticking to it. SketchUp's more intuitive, more simpler, and easier to teach and train than any other 3D program I've ever used. From AutoCAD Release 6 for me, and back in '88, through version 2015, the last one I used professionally, 3D Studio Max I've used, Civil 3D, which was LDD, and others. AutoCAD, Architectural Desktop, Revit, etc. On top of all this, SketchUp is more professional looking, once again, my opinion, using actual client materials has the lowest learning curve. I love it when a client comes up to me and says, hey, I got all these swatches at Home Depot. Can I use those color in your model? All of them? I said, sure. Which one's where? And I'll take that RGB color on the back of a swatch from Home Depot or Lowe's. I'll go into SketchUp. I'll create a material. I'll type in the numbers. And I'll put that color in SketchUp. Somebody says, I just took a picture of this dried wood I found in my backyard. Can we put some of that in the living room wall? Sure, send me the photograph. I'll put the photograph in your wall, the actual photograph. But I'm also somebody who likes to do a lot in CAD, and I do a lot. I'll add that to my materials dialog box so I can do it again and again and again and not have to go get that photograph. So anyway, on top of all this, it's more professional looking. This is my professional and final opinion. I'm almost done, everybody. I'm going to show you something here really quick. This is a letter a good friend of mine said. Started using SketchUp version 2.1 back in 1986. I will not read all of this. Over the years, I got very proficient with it. You can read the paragraphs there. Towards the end of that, it's really nice. He's very picky about how he used it and very explanatory. As time went on, he got more professional with SketchUp. Keep reading. It talks a little bit about how he redrew everything in AutoCAD, found it cumbersome, resulted in errors in the plans. He forced himself to figure it out. That sentence right there, I forced myself to figure it out. He put effort into it and he succeeded. This is an architect. The geography was a remarkable change. It still has the disconnect that really was bothersome. A few years ago, I upgraded to Windows 7. Boy, how long ago was that? This letter is old, isn't it? It's old as him, too. That's okay. He tried loading AutoCAD. It didn't work. I called AutoCAD for the fix. The only remedy was to pay $4,000 for AutoCAD or $7,000 for each of his 3 machines. Wow, I bet that number's no longer the same. That finally did it for me, and so I was forced to use layout. I love that. I was focused on it, and I was like, I got to use that. I tried layout before, and it seemed difficult and clunky. I had tried the new version. At first, my thought was, what did I get myself into? Anybody ever feel that way? As I worked farther and I began to realize that it is as intuitive as SketchUp, graphically for support from AutoCAD, you can compose your drawing exactly the way you want it on screen. It truly is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Love that statement. And then the drawing of this link, talking about the drawing, and this is from Nick Sonder. Some of you know him. This is an architect who wrote this back in 2000-something. He's a good friend of mine. I've had the very distinct pleasure of knowing him. I knew Nick for 2 years before I ever met him, and Nick Sonder to me is a mentor guru in the SketchUp realm. I think everybody sees his drawings and they go, wow. I had somebody come up to me, a student, and showed me a drawing and said, can you help me draw like that? And I looked at it and said, sure, and I threw the piece of paper on the table. And then I said, wait a minute, what was that? Wow, that's pretty good. And sure enough, that student learned how to draw that way. Jared was one of them, I believe. He learned a lot of the skills that could do that, and most of my students had the skills to draw just like that. Now, Nick is somebody that's here, and it's a pleasure for me to have him here. I wanted to share a few things here. I'm going to have Nick come up here. These are my final words. I know this went quick. I wasn't here to try to teach you how to bring a CAD file in. I just wanted to show it to you. I've said this to so many people. SketchUp is so simple. It takes me to help you misunderstand it. You laugh. It's true. It's true. I have one last quote, and this is Nick's quote. Quotes from a couple of professional users. I think SketchUp will be the future for architectural documentation. At least I know it will be for me. And if you don't believe that, that letter was 9 years ago, I believe. Coming up on a decade since I've known him. And I'm going to have Nick come up here in a minute. Come on up here, Nick, for a second. Thank you, Nick. Everybody give Nick a warm welcome. Nick is humble and probably mad at me for doing this, but I had to do that. I like paying him back. Nick, I'm going to let Nick talk and say a few words. I think it's important for him to see. Told you. I want you to know that if you have any questions concerning his problems, I could answer them. But you know what? I'd rather you listen to the horses now.
Yeah, so Larry's exactly right. I had to go through a transition where I did use AutoCAD for many, many years. I learned it at RISD in college when it was in its infancy. and it was really bad. We thought the coolest thing was actually the pen plotter, and it was just awesome until it would tear into the page and just yeah. No, like, the worst is you'd see someone get really mad at it and just yank it and break all the pen nibs. That was always fun. So, yeah, when I graduated RISD, I did actually a lot of hand drawing initially. When I went to RISD, which is primarily an art school that has a great architecture program, but they require all the students to take part in basically the same program as a freshman. And then you have to continue as an architect to take more and more art classes outside the field of architecture. And you actually graduate, which is pretty cool, with a Bachelor of Fine Arts after 4 years, and then you get your Bachelor of Architecture after your 5th year. So I just, started using AutoCAD quite a bit. Got to the point we had all these Lisp routines. Larry Belk's the king of Lisp routines back there. To make it work, and it worked well for us for a while. And then we found the little SketchUp program really early on. It was in 2000, and I started playing with it in our firm and started to develop basic building shells to show clients, because it was our first stab at 3D. It was really amazing. And then I started getting frustrated because we were then taking those and then redrawing them in AutoCAD, which was just a disaster. Half the time it wouldn't transfer correctly. And so I finally started doing a hybrid where I'd capture JPEGs and import those into AutoCAD and then scale them appropriately, so I would have like a hybrid of SketchUp and AutoCAD. And then exactly as Larry said, in 2000, or I guess I was loading Windows 7 on a machine, and all of a sudden my ADT AutoCAD 2004 would not work. And they basically gave me the option to pay for a new one. And I said, I hate the program so much, I'm going to figure out something else. Just crashing all the time. It was never fun to coordinate. It was never fun to draw in. I use the term WYSIWYG because you're always looking at a black screen with a bunch of colored lines, and then, you'd print a PDF or print paper just to see what it looks like, and then you'd make your adjustments. It was just really clumsy, I thought. And so I went, and this is what you kind of have to do to transition. You just have to say, I'm going to do this project all in SketchUp and Layout. And I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to find the mistakes, find what works for me, find what doesn't, and then fix those things. And, you learn from those mistakes as much as you learn from your successes. And so finally led me to, showing people online, hey, you can actually do construction documents. This was actually in Sketchucation. I was on their site and someone complained, well, you can't do a real construction document. And I said, well, I just did several projects and here's an elevation. And about 2 weeks later, Chris Dizon called me and said, hey, you need to come to Basecamp, and sent Tyson, actually the guy behind the counter, or behind the camera, out to interview me. And that was that first YouTube video that was done back in 2011, 7 years ago. Amazing. So now I haven't had AutoCAD loaded on any machine at all in my office in many, many years. And all I have is SketchUp and Layout and, a couple other programs I use for, PDFs and so forth. But it's allowed me, as I'm a sole proprietor with no employees at all this time. And I, this year, generated 10 custom homes in that time just by myself, which is quite a bit of work, but I couldn't do it if I was using AutoCAD. There'd just be no way to actually keep up with that. So it does work. You just have to be patient, and like Larry was saying, build your libraries, work with templates, and really learn how to use SketchUp efficiently. And once you do, you'll find it is incredibly fast and incredibly accurate. And when people call it a toy, there's one way they're looking at it. They're being, sarcastic, but toys are fun. And that's the big difference between AutoCAD and SketchUp. SketchUp is fun to use. AutoCAD is not.
Very true.
So we only have a couple of minutes. Yes. So I actually generate all of the first thing I do when I start any project is I get a topographic survey file, and it'll be a DWG. I import it into SketchUp, and it places all the contour information at elevation, and it places all of the line work, because it won't import text, which is fine, just all the line work at 0, 0. And so then I highlight the contours, use the sandbox tool, create a mesh. Yeah, yeah, and then I clean up all their layer systems and transfer them to my layer systems. It doesn't take me, I usually will generate the site model and site plan just, in a morning or afternoon, and then it's done. Yes? Yes, you just have to know what to give them and what they're going to be looking for. And actually, in some cases, I get compliments that they like what they get from me better than other architects, because they'll get this giant file, like a site plan. Our surveyors like to lay out the foundation on the site. And so they'll ask for, I need your site plan so I can go out and survey all the building corners and the driveway. And so I go into SketchUp. On my site plan, I isolate the property line, the building footprint, and the driveway, and that's it. And then I export that as an AutoCAD file out of SketchUp, and they love that file because it's easy. It's like 65 kilobytes, and they're done. And then, for other engineers, like I work, as an example, all the time with fire sprinkler designers, because I guess it's not in California, every single family home has to be sprinklered now since 2010. And so they usually ask for actually the most. They want to have site plan, floor plans, building sections, reflected ceiling plan. And for them, they like to do it on what would be the equivalent of paper space. So there, I just give them an export right out of Layout, and Layout will export each sheet, and then they get all the text. Now, what they do get, and when you open up an AutoCAD, is the raster viewport that I have, which looks and shows all the pretty textures. That comes out as actually a raster image, kind of pasted on the sheet. But anything that's vector line work, like floor plan or a section cuts, which is what they're looking for, that all is vector line work. Plus they get all the text, which is nice. Several of the guys I've worked with actually keep the raster image in place, which is cool, because then when they go to create their PDF, it still looks like the SketchUp drawing, even though they're doing it in AutoCAD. For structural engineers, it's really easy. You export both. You give them the 3D model. If they're using 3D CAD, you can export a 3D AutoCAD file. You can also freeze frame your scenes. If you save scenes for floor plans, elevations, and such, you can have those exported as just line work that they can see in model space. And then on top of that, then you can give them the full layout background with all your grids and everything for your floor plan as an export out of Layout. And the key for Layout, because people have had trouble, they open and go, God, it's just a giant mess. And then I tell them, just select paper space. And as soon as they know, like, oh, and the paper space, it's just the exact sheet that you see in Layout. So it works really well. I don't get complaints anymore after doing it now for many years, and I have to do it on every single project. The one I don't have to do often at all is with structural engineering, because I trained my structural engineer to convert from AutoCAD to SketchUp, which if any of you saw the presentation last night, they actually now refuse to work in AutoCAD or Revit, so whenever they get a project, they actually convert it to SketchUp. Yeah, yeah. And their work, it's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah. So you have to jump the boat.
You have to dive in.
Yeah.
You have to take a leap of faith, and also count on what you have. You have good skills, whether in AutoCAD or other programs. Mm-hmm. You have great skills. Bring them with you. And if you have great skills you've learned, take your time and do it right the first time. And really research out there. There's others who are doing this too. Nick's not the only one that does this. I'm not the only one that does it and trains it, but I definitely can guarantee you there's a lot of other people. Get as much resources as you can from others. Look around, do some research on the web. The web sometimes has some really good information, but fellow colleagues, talk to other people who are in the same boat, trying to do the same thing, and utilize your assets. You have a lot of them around you. Use them.
I just did a presentation this morning. I don't know if anyone was in here that saw that. And I had several people that had seen the presentation 2 years ago at the last Basecamp and had their computers out and said, hey, I want to show you what I've done, and showed me these beautiful projects. One of them actually has some of their artwork is up on the in the hallways. Yeah, and beautiful, beautiful projects, beautifully detailed. It's nice to see. I'm glad people can walk through it and make it work. Yes, Larry.
Why don't you tell them how much time you save AutoCAD and SketchUp and also Jesse engineering? How much time do you save?
Yeah, I mean, all of us have cut our time on projects down to about 30% of what they were before with AutoCAD projects. And it's simply a matter of how you structure things in the system you use, that you spend most of your time doing what's important, which is designing, because you're working in the 3D model, as opposed to getting all of your drawings ready in time for the building department. So the drawings more or less just become the byproduct of the work. And once you've set up the templates, everything transfers really quick. In this little session we had, which was for some, more advanced users, we were able to take a highly detailed model of a house that I had, and had a group of, I'm not sure how many people in there, it was probably close to 100, but did a 2 floor plans, roof plan, all floor elevations of that project to scale in layout, and they all looked beautiful, and they could play around and adjust things like the shadows and fog, and it worked out really well. In one, yeah, that's right. We did it in the first half. Yeah. So it's not something that's impossible. It's, going to these events are great because it's a wealth of knowledge. I learn something every single time I come. And, having people around, instructors, Larry's a great resource. And SketchUp itself, they have their forums, SketchUp forums, their Sketchucation.
Meetup groups.
Yeah, there's lots of people that have the information. There's tons of YouTube videos to get you started, basic ones that are put out by SketchUp as well as individuals all over that show you how this works, how to set it up, how to make it work. Some people even write books. Yeah. Yeah.
Nick wrote a wonderful book, and that book is still something I use to teach with. I do recommend certain books, and that is one of them. Daniel Tall makes a really great book, rendering in SketchUp for something different than AutoCAD, but definitely a great SketchUp book.
And Matt Donnelly, who co-wrote the book with me, has a wonderful site, mastersketchup.com. Huge resource of videos and books, and there's just, the community is a lot different than AutoCAD, and you can tell by this event. This event's very casual and fun. The party was a blast. People are fun. People are up late night. It's a good time, and that's the way it should be. Because toys are fun.
Anybody have any specific question they wanted answered during this session? And I try to save the questions towards the end, something that might be pertinent to you. Yes, ma'am.
So SketchUp and layout, the best way you can describe it in AutoCAD terms is SketchUp is your model space, layout is your paper space. So it is a viewport that you're creating that is looking at the SketchUp model. So you do all of your design work, all of your modeling, everything in SketchUp. You put your notes, dimensions, and things like that in layout.
When I teach SketchUp transition to CAD, from CAD to SketchUp, I do try to get as much cleaned up in a CAD file as possible before I bring it into SketchUp. CAD has the ability to bring in a lot of line work, or has a lot of line works and polylines. One of the major problems a lot of clients have seen is when you bring a CAD file in SketchUp, the lines don't join up, you can't make a face. There's some solutions to that. There's a command in AutoCAD everybody's forgotten called fuzz. Most of you are looking at me like, what? Yes, fuzz. FUZZ, enter, and it's usually set to 0. You can change that to 1. Select all your polylines, your NP edit command, and you can change that, and it will join some of those lines up. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. That's a way to clean up a CAD file to help it before you get into SketchUp. And on the heels of what he just said, I recommend doing as much SketchUp work on your model as possible before you start layout. You can go back and forth, it's not a problem, but if you get as much design first, you're not going to have to always reload and bring up that new version that you've changed again and again. If you can do that, it'll save you a lot of time. But inevitably, you will come across something in layout that says, I got to fix that SketchUp file. Layout, you can modify your SketchUp file while you're in layout. If you know how to do that, I recommend definitely learning. If you don't know how to do that, it's very helpful. I simply close my SketchUp file. I work in my layout file. If I come across a problem, I'll close layout, I'll open SketchUp, change it, and then I'll go back to layout and open it. As soon as you open layout, the fresh new drawing in SketchUp will reload in it. And if it doesn't, it's very simple under the pull-down menu, document settings, to reload that file. And it's definitely helpful to definitely use both.
If it's, as long as the dimension is connected to an edge or a point, truly in a point of the model.
One of the things I do not do, and I think Nick doesn't do either, is dimension in SketchUp.
No.
I dimension everything in layout.
Yeah. There are people that do. There's people that
Some
put
do.
their grids,
Some
and
do.
some, there's some architects that will put everything in there, but it tends to make a mess of the file. I think it's better to keep that SketchUp folder as really, that's where you're
Model.
doing all your design. It's strictly the model. And, I have other processes that help the efficiency and this file size. And there's just, there's basic rules that you want to follow in SketchUp that make sense. Always draw on layer 0. Don't start using layer like you would in AutoCAD. Just never touch that. It's always on 0. Then you always create groups and components of all your geometry and place those on layers.
Immediately after.
Layers work entirely different. And so layers just for visual control when you set up all of your scenes. So there's a bunch of scenes you set up in SketchUp, and those transfer directly into layout. So in layout, you'll look under SketchUp model, and all of your scenes you've established are there. First floor plan, second floor plan, roof plan, elevations. It's very simple.
Really, go ahead, one more.
It's kind of difficult to, because we are on the same page. We come from Belgium, we are younger than you. Well, we kind of
Hey.
No, you're younger than me.
but the same thing as was in your letter. And basically was the same for us.
Yeah.
We don't have
Same for you.
Yes.
It happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Definitely something that happens.
Only support and try to bring the same message to anybody.
Yeah.
Like SketchUp is, well, one thing to put it is SketchUp is Mickey Mouse software, but it is, Mickey Mouse is fucking brilliant.
I equate to
There's
SketchUp.
going to have to be a beep there, I
I
think.
know. Cut that out.
Yes.
I do equate the learning curve really quick. Sorry.
Yes, I custom model all my windows and doors. I just have a really big library of them. And I do them by sash type. So I'll have single sash, dual sash, 3 sash, 4 sash, 5 sash, 6 sash. And then they're all set up as groups. So there's a frame group inside and then sash group. And then those will get resized to openings. And same with trim. There's different trim packages for the types that go with the windows and all of those. Same with doors. Yep, and cabinets, exactly. That's how I do detailing also, is with a kit of parts. I'll be doing a presentation on that tomorrow if anyone wants to see how I do 3D SketchUp details for my construction documents.
One really quick thing before we're running out of time a little bit, we'll get to your question, but I really want to say one thing. When it comes to SketchUp, a slow SketchUp user is still faster than a great CAD user. A slow SketchUp user works faster and more efficient, has more fun in it. As a teacher, I equate things in numbers. SketchUp for me is 70% faster in everything I do. I know that from the comparison of what I used to take me to do in AutoCAD compared to what I do the same thing in SketchUp. 70% faster. If I was an owner of a business and somebody came up to me and said, I can save you 70% of your money, I should consider what they have to say.
Are you sure that's not 30% of the time you used to
30% of the
spend on
time I-
AutoCAD?
Good. I definitely feel that it's changed my career. I had a chance to talk to John Backus last night, one of the founding members, and I thanked him. I was just very helpful to me to change my career using this program. It has made a difference not just for me in my career, but for everybody in the industry. It's amazing to see. One last question, the gentleman over here.
I was kind of curious about line weights. They're
So the way I deal with how to make the drawing pretty is I layer up viewports. And so I do like a combination so that in layout you're producing a drawing that consists of a raster viewport, so it captures all of the textures and shade and shadow and fog effects that you can do in SketchUp that make the model look really amazing and dynamic. And then I'll overlay on top of that information that I will capture out of the model with section cuts that will be, for instance, just all the walls, and I'll vector render that in a dark color. And then I'll put another one on top of that that's capturing all of the cabinets and trim, doors and windows, and do that a lighter color. So you can, with styles, you can affect how that outside line is, you can affect what the section cut weight is, but the reality is you almost don't need to do the line weight as you would think of in AutoCAD to make the drawing dynamic anymore. It's more a matter of how you're layering up these different layers on top of the raster image. And so it becomes more dynamic than just thinking of a line weight.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. Okay.
We're down to 5.
Any more questions? Yes.
What, between making your transition from AutoCAD to SketchUp, what percentage of your time is taken transitioning from production to design?
So how much time am I spending
Spending
production,
for production.
actual production?
Like,
You know, I think I know what you're saying. So, you know, it's kind of a unique thing. You know, back in the day, we used to always structure our fees that if you were doing just design, or instead of the full 5 phases, or even the old 5 phases, if I can remember, it was 10% for schematic design, 20% for design development. God, now I can't remember what. No, I remember construction documents was always like 40% of the. Sorry, and 5% for bidding negotiations, 10 or 20% for CA. Is that what it was? Hopefully that added up to 100. So I currently fixed my fee on the design and documentation portion, and then I do hourly for the CA and bidding negotiations. And currently I have mine at 20, 40, 40. So 20% schematic design, 40% design development, 40% construction documents. But I'm thinking I need to change it because the reality is it's probably more likely to be 20, probably 70, 10. Because the drawings are more a byproduct of the actual process. And so you're designing and being able to modify and enhance that model all the way through. So I don't spend actually all that much time. By the time I'm finished with the design, it usually only takes me on a custom home anywhere between, you know, roughly 2 to 2.5 weeks to do the full set of construction documents. And for me, the set of construction documents on a custom 3,000 square foot home is about 60 sheets. And so that'll include multiple site plans. It'll include all the floor plans, roof plan, reflected ceiling plans, elevations, building sections. I do a whole series of drawings on my A4 sheets, which are just assemblies, which are little 3D vignettes of all the different assembly types. Then there'll be the A5 elevation, interior elevation sheets, capturing all of those. Then I will go on to all the exterior detail sheets, the interior detail sheets, the MPE sheets, and then add in my structural engineering at the back end. But it's, once you set up a system, it's really fast. I mean, for those that were in that meeting today, you could see how quickly you can just set up your drawings and have,
Once the model.
here's your design. Oh, sorry, that was going to go down. Once you've set it up, it goes really fast. And so you can, a lot of times I'll work on a model and I know I've got a meeting at, say, 4 o'clock, and I'll be like, okay, by 3 o'clock I got to stop so I can send this off to layout, generate my PDFs, and get them to the meeting. So it goes very fast.
Really quick, everybody, thank you for coming here. This is a brief presentation. It was a pleasure to have Nick up here too. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm going to stick around. I'm not sure what Nick's doing, but if he wants to, he can too, and answer any other questions anybody else has. Thank you very much for coming here, everybody.
Thank you.